Okay, let's do some Shakeyburns singing. So today we have Kerr's Ass, and we have discussed before on Shakeyburns, but it's a really good poem. The more you look at it, the more you see. Besides, I don't think we have the recordings anyway. And I don't really remember what we've been saying last time. So I think it will be good to go to it again. It's really good. So let's read it. Kerr's Ass. We borrowed the loan of Kerr's ass to go to Dundalk with butter. Brought him home the evening before the market and exiled at night in Mucker. We hilled up the cart before the door. We took the harness inside, the straw-stuffed straddle, the broken brick-shed with bits of bull-wire tied, the winkers that had no choke band, the collar and the reins. In Ealing, Broadway, London town, I name their several names, until the world comes to life, mourning the silent org, and the god of imagination waking in a Mucker form. Amazing, very mysterious. Or what do you say about it?
Mysterious is the right word.
What's your impression? What is it
Impression,
about?
yes.
What do you feel about it?
Well, I don't think I have a wide array of feelings, so I either feel confused or I feel something special about the poem. So this is the kind of one which produces confusion in me, and the confusion is probably due to the fact that the heading does in fact reflect what's going to happen in the poem, but not quite so. And I might imagine there's much more to it than just what this loan of Kerr's ass really means. But what? That's a mystery. So the mysterious poem is indeed what?
Or what is it about?
Well, it is to some extent a poem about someone named we who borrowed an ass, a donkey, sort of, to go to a market, next day to presumably to sell some butter. So the ass in question is basically the means of transportation, and that's basically it. The poem includes all the paraphernalia of what an ass's
bits of harness.
The bits of harness, sort of, and it concludes by a very philosophical passage talking about the world, a world in fact, or the world, talking about gods, the god of imagination, and as far as I'm concerned, at least at the moment, I can't really say that I see the connection between the last four lines and what preceded.
Yeah, but we have the previous two lines which connect it, which explains.
Yeah, which sort of explain, and of course So it's a strange mix of something probably technical about, as you say, bits of harness, and something that probably leads the writer, the poet, to high planes of philosophy, or
maybe it's not high planes of philosophy, maybe it's something much more simpler.
maybe.
So what you said is not what it's about, it's a summary. Yeah, it's a short repetition of the text. But what is it about? So let's have a look. So first of all, we look at the title. When we come to a poem, first of all, we look at the title. Yeah, when we choose a poem to read, we have a number of titles. We look at the titles. And we have title Kerr's Ass. What does it tell us?
Well, if we only concentrate on the title, then we might think of a donkey, we might think of something else. And the current usage, the current English usage, and the fact that most of us live in towns probably makes the latter version, something else, much more probable than the former version, a donkey.
Although what you think about is the four-letter word, and it's different. And the word ass is used, you're as stupid as a donkey. You're an ass, in that sense. But yeah, lots of people think about something else, which is spelled with an R in the middle and with an E in the end. It sounds similar, yeah. That can be confusing for many people. So why do we use it in the title?
Maybe just to produce confusion, because they know, we know that on this day, on the 10th of October, someone will be reading the poem, and the more they make it, the more unintelligible it seems to some of the participants, the better. And in fact, isn't it what very often happens in art, not only in poetry but also in painting, for example, when you deliberately hide the meaning behind a heading or behind an image that is probably only secondary to what?
It's not really secondary. Because again, if you think about asses, either donkeys or the other meaning, is it something high and poetic?
No, not usually. Again, usually poetry is about love, life, all the relationship that people might have. But it's only rarely that they write about. Again, they might write about horses, and horse is probably a noble animal, unlike the ass, who is much more sort of down to earth.
Okay. Then again, we have some poems about donkeys, and usually what happens is it's an allegory or a metaphor for what?
Well, the one I remember by Chesterton is about Jesus Christ, who enters, what was it?
Yes. So we have that symbol of a donkey either as someone who is stubborn or someone who is really modest.
Who's really modest, and I think.
Do we have it in the poem?
I'm not sure that we do have an image, because unlike some of the other poems which provide a sort of a description or otherwise help us to create an image of what's in the heading, this poem does not, at least as far as I remember, does not really convey an image of Kerr's
So we
us.
have a double track in the heading alone. So first you may think about something, like you say, else, which is not a donkey, and you're like, oh no, it's one of those horrible, disgusting poems. And then the author, Patrick, says, haha, it's you and your dirty mind. It's an honest donkey. You're a spoiled little person if you thought something else. And then you think, okay, if it's about the donkey, then probably it's something moralistic. And he's like, haha, no. It's about a normal, good, real donkey, normal labor, good labor, real life, and not abstractions. And then you say, okay, And then, like you say, it turns, and in the end you meet God. Okay, and then the second word here is Kerr's ass. Not just any ass, but an ass which belongs to someone called Kerr. Again, why do we need it? Do we need it? Who is Kerr?
Well, the only thing we seem to know about Kerr is that he or she, or they, the Kerrs, are owners of the ass. And that's the meaning implied by the heading. That's also the meaning that we encounter in the very first line of the poem, and I think that's our only encounter with Kerr. So basically, we don't know much about him or her.
Yeah, we don't even know who it is.
Yeah, we might imagine, but what's probably more important is that if we want something really practical, something really loud, and something really unable to close the door.
Happy young asses, free as the wind. Yeah.
So when we think of something down to earth, probably we want as poets to emphasize that by providing a specific name, not the name of an ass, because it's never mentioned, but the name of the owner. So it's something really down to earth, it's something really specific. And as we discover that the ass is not an allegory, at least by taking what's in the term literally, we also discover the working nature. So it's not just, you might imagine a children's poet, for example, playing with it by telling a story of an ass, by giving it a name, by sort of playing on the relationship between the owner, but nothing of that sort happens. So it's a plain working animal that's sort of that never really loses its connection, its link to just being a means of labor of some sort. Unlike, again, if I may refer to another poem we read, The Horses, where horses appear as real horses, also as a sort of a symbol, but they are, in the course of the poem, they are filled with some content. Here, we only touch upon this, what was the word? The
harness.
Harness, yes, the harness, all the decorations worn by.
It's not really decorations.
And unfortunately for the ass, it's not about decorations. It's something that really presses the ass and makes it work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Then again, we understand that whatever images we meet in a poem, they somehow reflect ourselves in one way or another, even if it's just a plain working animal. Still by the relation to it, we describe our relation to ourselves, basically. How do we treat the animal? Yeah, how do we see the animal? Because it makes no difference. It could be a person working for you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so here they're really practical, down to earth, working.
And a bit, if I may venture a suggestion, probably also a bit, what's the right word? A bit. I mean, if we look at how it begins, it uses two words which basically mean the same thing, and so the style of the poem, the language of the poem is a bit not harsh, but it is a bit rustic, I would say.
Yeah, because
to reflect the nature.
Because if you're a working person, you don't use fancy language in your everyday life.
Yeah, in fact, if you're a working person, you, unlike me, you would probably know all the individual parts of the garden. You would never call it a decoration, and you would certainly be able to put it to good use. And that's probably why all these...
Mind you, close the door. Oh, that's a whole bird. Mind you, close the door, please. Okay, so the first stanza goes, we have lots of passes. Maybe they have no mind, so they can't do what I told them and mind to close the door.
Well, I think they're going to circulate for a bit, so it's
let them circulate. So we have the first stanza, which is one sentence, and then the last three are really one long sentence or two sentences, depends on how you look at it. Well, we finished circulating, but they still had no mind to close the door. So on one hand, because we get some fresh air, on another hand, can be tiresome and a bit cold. Not as cold as at night in Mucker.
Oh, yeah.
So the first stanza goes, we borrowed the loan of Kerr's ass to go to Dundalk with barter, brought him home the evening before the market, and exiled at night in Mucker. That doesn't sound like poetry.
No, it doesn't. In fact, the beginning sounds very... well, what is it that you can borrow? You can borrow money, then it sounds like technical banking language. You can borrow somebody's animal, working animal, as is the case here. So it's very practical, and there's nothing about poetry, because we are just looking at a herd and at shepherd and shepherdess.
Yeah, what happens here is we don't have adjectives really. And again, it's quite plain, quite technical, it's all business.
Yeah.
It's not like we borrowed the awesome loan of Kerr's poor ass to go to faraway Dundalk with the best butter in
the universe.
In the universe. Yeah. Oh, it's just describing. Just describing. Also, you can put it in prose, and you wouldn't notice. You borrow the loan of Kerr's ass to go to Dundalk with barter, brought him home the evening before the market, and exiled at night in Mucker. Yeah. Now, we have lots and lots of interesting moments here. Where do we start? Okay, let's start with the universe we are in. Where are we? What is Dundalk? What is Mucker? We have names. We have Kerr, we have Dundalk, we have Mucker.
Yeah.
So what do we know
So it makes it very concrete.
Where is it?
Yeah, but where is it? It might be somewhere on the island of Britain, I would say. The name Kerr and the name Patrick would probably point in the direction of Scotland.
Ireland.
Or
It's Ireland. It's about
Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah, so it's not on the island of Britain, it's on the island of Ireland. Well, basically, as far as I can see, we have a town named Dundalk, so we are currently not there because that's what we need the ass for. And there's something about Mucker. Is it a point midway in where our home is and where Dundalk lies?
Yeah, maybe, because again depends how we read it. I brought him home the evening before the market and exiled at night in Mucker. Is it they went to Kerr, took the donkey, came home in the evening and left in the evening as not to waste any time, and somewhere halfway to Dundalk they stopped at Mucker, maybe. Or maybe Mucker is home. We brought him home the evening before the market, and at home is where we spend the night.
Yeah, so that might be the case. So at least both interpretations are open to us, and when I said that these two specific names make it very concrete, I was sort of exaggerating, because it's concrete, we know the names, but as a plain reader, I can't really place them anywhere on the map.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. All we need to know is that somewhere in Ireland, and we can understand that he's not talking about any big towns. It's probably just a village. Dundalk and Mucker probably.
Yeah, so they're probably just big enough to attract some people to the local market. So it's a place where the local market takes place.
So what about the names Dundalk and Mucker? The names themselves,
well,
as names.
Again, they probably mean something in Irish. Dundalk, for me.
Because it's not supposed to be read just by Irishmen. Yeah, it's supposed to be read by anyone who knows English.
Yeah.
So it should tell us something.
It should tell us something. Well, it's one thing that's that I associate it with is dandelic. How do you pronounce dandelions? The flower.
Yeah, dandelions.
Dandelions, yeah. And these are nice flowers, and that's why this place begins sounding to me as something rural, something greenish, green, something really attractive, something that
or
again
you may
sends.
say Dundalk is like somewhere down.
Maybe.
But it sounds strong. We have d.
Yeah.
Dundalk.
And again, it doesn't sound, for example, African or French or something, due to all these probably misplaced connections I have with, for example, the word dandy. Although the pronunciation is clearly different, still there's some connection working in my mind, and somehow it seems to be in opposition to the word mucker, because mucker sounds much less romantic. If
it
that
sounds less romantic, and it sounds much softer because you have d and then mucker.
Yeah, and again, these associations.
No, there's no association. It's just a plain word.
I mean, mucker. Mockingbird.
No. Muck is dirt, mud, muck, mud. Same word.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So mucker is like a place of dirt or mud.
Oh.
We love mud. Mud is good. Mud flood anyone?
No. because there are at least two words that remind us. Mad in Danish means food, so probably it's no coincidence that they take butter to the
Yeah. Or maybe it doesn't really. It's not really important what sort of associations we have with the sounds of words. Maybe it's just something that he knows. He knows Kerr, he knows Dunlop, he knows Mucker, he knows the names of harness. It's something that creates his world. Yeah. Your question?
Well, the Irish question. Is it right to imagine Ireland as a country full of green trees and something, or is there lots of dirt in Ireland? So what's my impression is sort of.
I can't really tell you. Ireland is a big place. I imagine you find this and that, and then you have the hills. Things.
Yeah. So in the course, just in the space of these 4 lines, we probably have different parts of Ireland before us, something that is green, something and hilly, and something that is dirty and probably very prosaic.
Maybe. Okay, I think we should make a little break now. Break.
Okay, let's break a little, make.
Okay. So we just had a quick trip to Ireland and back. Of course, when we think about Ireland, it's not easy. We know the history of Ireland in relation to Britain, to England. But here, it's all okay. It's all peaceful.
Until someone starts kicking an ass out of it.
Okay, oh no problem. Right, so there's a lot going on. First of all, it's really unusual, either for a poem or for a prosaic bit. What is really unusual here? As a story.
Well, as a story, the unusual thing is that there's no story to tell.
There is story.
If a story is about events that happen expectedly or unexpectedly, then there's nothing in it to sort of. Again, I don't know whether it's a good. Whether it's true to say that every poem tells a story, probably.
Yes, it does. It does either emotionally or specifically. No. Something else, something really weird, something that you hardly ever see in a story, either prose or poem. And that's the first word we have here. What is it? What's the first word in here?
We.
Yeah. Do we know many poems which are from a collective perspective? Apart from Zematin? You know Zematin?
I think I've heard of him. I think he was a writer.
Yes, so his book is called We. And
Yes.
it's really unusual because either we have the third person, he, she, it,
But it's,
or we have I. To have we as a narrator is really rare and unusual, and it tells us a lot. What does it tell us? We have we as a narrator, and we don't know who we, just we and we and we.
Well, maybe it tells us that the narrator is not an individual, as we like him or her to be, but is a sort of a unity of a community of people, and the writer only exists as the community, so it does not imagine himself, herself as a single unit that cannot be divided, that does not necessarily belong to something bigger. And again, that might explain the peculiarities of, for example, Irish way to perceive the world and the man's place in the world. Although it's probably far-fetched.
Yeah, it is a bit far-fetched. But here we have again a close community. We, a group. We borrowed the loan of Kerr's ass. Okay, we borrowed something, we don't have it, we borrowed it, it's okay. To go to Dundalk with barter. Maybe a barter is again a little joke on the poet's side after the word ass. Maybe it's like, maybe that's why they have butter and not something else. To go to Dundalk with barter. Brought him home the evening before the market and exiled at night in Mucker. So, how we are moving inside the poem. First, we have a really broad, undefined space. We borrow the loan of Kerr's ass to go to Dundalk with barter. It's nowhere specific, just a big open space. Could be here, could be there. Yeah. And then we narrow it. Brought him home. Yeah. So from alien outside, from big space outside, we come home. Yeah. And interestingly, it's him, not brought it, but brought him. So even though it's, like you say, just a working animal, still it's not an it, it's not a thing. We treat the donkey fairly. Yeah, we know it's a he, or we know that he's alive. We brought him home.
So he becomes part of us.
Mm-hmm. At least for a while.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I brought him home. So now we come home, and again, home is a very important place. Yeah, home is a kind of a shelter. So they were somewhere else, now they are home. The evening before the market, we have the evening, again, it's a quiet time of day, going dark. Before the market, again, and the market is lots of people, and it's noisy. And we have that, again, kind of swaying between lots of people, the Dundalk, a big place, Kerr, a man or even a family, and something small and secluded, home, evening, and then again something big and noisy and full of people, market. And then right after market, big and noisy and full of people, we have the word exile. Again, separation, some sort of shelter maybe. And do you often say exile?
Yeah.
So can you comment on it?
Well, the active poet exile usually belongs to something else. So we have poets who, like Byron, for example, live in exile and who tell us sort of sad or pessimistic stories about the world that is unfair. Exile is probably not a positive word, in a sense that it's if we exclude something, we use the word exile. So instead of sort of including someone as we did in the previous slide, exile beginning with X means
So what is exile in a straight sense? In its normal sense, what is it?
Well, in its normal sense, it's a situation where someone has to leave his or her native country and live somewhere else.
So that's why we may think that Mucker is not where they live, but somewhere they stop in the middle. Again, in which case they're nowhere, in no place. Yeah, they're neither here at home nor there in Dundal. But again, it depends how we read it. Or maybe we say they just stay in Mucker, but that's where they usually live.
Oh yeah. And of course, exile, as I start thinking of it, is connected to Exodus. So somehow, if we depart from where we live, that's somehow again something foreign, something alien, something that's yeah.
So that's the word which stands out in that stanza, because everything else is normal, but exile is poetic.
Poetic and unexpected,
Unexpected, and it makes sense, because if we take the poem as a whole, what it is about, then exile is what it's about. And so, even as he begins telling his story, that word comes into his narrative, his storytelling, because that's what he's thinking about, that's what he feels. So he says exile, he doesn't mean exile in Mucker, he means exile in his present situation, which is described in the end. So we narrow our camera, zooming in. So first we have big open spaces, lots of people, then we come home, evening, and then it gets darker, night. Night in itself is separation, because now you have some sort of a home, a house where you're staying, and the night, the darkness around you. Yeah, so it's a really strong position. We have lots of poems that use it, lots of stories that use it. Yeah, again, that's how we create the image of reality. Have a small, safe place. But here, if we suppose that we brought him home first and then we exile that night in Mucker and go somewhere else, then that small place isn't secure. It's not your home, it's somewhere, you don't know where. It's not rooted, not grounded. Yeah, it can, okay, you don't belong there, really. Maybe you do belong there, but still, you have a small little place of life, light, protection, but all around you, you have night. What is night? Darkness, like, again, insecurity, unknown, some sort of fears, something. We don't like night. We don't like night in English. We love night in Gnoniki, but we don't like night in English. I mean, you think about it, and you don't say 1 at night, in the night, you say 1 in the morning. Yeah, when you speak about time, you don't have night. And you say in the morning, and in the day, and in the evening, but at night. So night is a little point, and you don't like looking at it. Exiled at night in Mucker. But again, maybe it's just a peaceful darkness. Maybe. Anyway, it's a dark time when anything may happen. Exile at night in Mucker. Again, it sounds really magical when you go somewhere to a strange place and you spend the night there, and it changes you somehow. So you can read it in a normal way, as it's likely, because we talk about practical things. Okay, we just stay in Mucker, nothing unusual. But because we use the word exile, that charges it, makes it more powerful, and we pay attention to it. And Mucker, what is Mucker? Dirt, mud. Interesting.
Macro.
Okay, we heeled up the cart before the door. We took the harness inside. The straw stuffed straddle, the broken breeching, with bits of bull wire tied. The winkers that had no chalk band, the collar and the reins. So again we continue with we, it's still we. Again we have no explanation. Because why do we have no explanation? Because the narrator really talks to himself. And obviously if you tell yourself a story, you remember something, you don't need to explain it because you already know it. So he doesn't need to explain who is it we and who is it Kerr and what is Dundle, what is Mucker and what are the bits of harness. Just we. We held up the cart before the door. Yeah, so we are still outside. Held up the cart. We have our load. It's probably, I don't know if it's an empty cart or do they already have butter in it. But anyway, they leave the cart at the door. We're outside. And then we go inside. So again, it gets more concentrated, more focused, what we look at. We took the harness inside. And again, we have the word inside. We go inside. We again, we don't like the outside world. We prefer to stay inside, and we take our belongings, what makes ourselves us, inside to keep it. Because our memories, if we speak about a nation, then it's again, it's the memory of the nation, it's the language, it's the traditions which keep you. Yeah. So we take the harness inside. So what do we focus on harness? We don't look at the donkey. We don't mention the donkey again. We don't see the donkey. We see the cart. We see the harness, but the donkey is missing. That's a big mystery. Where is the donkey?
Either the donkey is unimportant, or which might be the case, but is unlikely because his sort of name appears in the heading and in the first line. Or maybe we feel so much together with the donkey that we don't really need to mention him again, because we are now one in the same group, and only these bits of harness remain something, some extra bits of something that belongs to the outside, and by taking it inside we sort of perform the act, sort of somehow domesticating. And if we fear the world outside, that's how we domesticate all our fears, that's how we make them non-dangerous.
Okay, and what is harness?
Well, harness is used to basically make the donkey work, to sort of, because otherwise it's really difficult to steer and to make him sort of perform the tasks we borrow him for.
Yeah. So when we speak about harness, do we think about happy, wild donkey?
No, we think of
frolicking in the sea.
Yeah, we sort of think of something restrictive, something that's really deprives the donkey of its own free will, if I may say so.
And if of all things, what we take inside us is the harness, what is it?
Well, maybe as we take it inside, we sort of unharness, what's the word, the donkey. So we make him free again, and we take the harness inside. It might mean that we just want the donkey to be happy for a while.
Oh, we don't think about the donkey. We think about ourselves and the harness.
Well,
why do we need to mention it at all?
Maybe because as it's now inside the restrictions that were sort of part of someone's donkey we borrowed from someone are now part of us. But then again, the harness, if we imagine it's at our home, then it probably deprives us of any other options. But it might also empower us, because harness can be used.
Yes. Yeah, what I guess, again, it can only be a guess, is if you take the harness inside and it's more than just something abstract, something that this or that, it's a part of your world. Because then we look at the harness, and is it new, shiny, or does it have some sort of character?
Well, there's something that is broken, there's and sort of fixed with bits of bull wire. There's this probably very again very rustic, very unpretentious looking straw stuffed straddle, instead of something much more, elegant or whatever. So I don't know whether the next line about the winkers that have no choke band also says that the entire thing is old, has been used for a long time, as you say, has its own story to tell.
Yeah.
Although it might only be a very repetitive story of.
So again, what we have here, what kind of people are they? We and Kerr. Are they rich and lazy?
No, they are not rich and lazy. They are quite poor because they cannot afford a donkey of their own. They are not lazy because they bring the donkey late at night, sort of, and they are supposed to depart next morning, just probably at sunrise. And again, they are hardworking people. They and people who know how things function. They know that they have to kill out the cart before the door. They know all these minute details about the harness, and well, basically they are hard-working people with probably with who lead hard lives and who more or less resemble the donkey himself, in that they basically have no choice but to work and produce something and sell it, and then continue working again. And of course butter is nice, but again, you don't expect to make a hefty sum of money selling your own produce.
Oh, well, it depends.
Well, it depends, yeah, but again, And okay, let's. Also, the thing about this harness being old and how that's clearly seen much use is somehow sheds light on those we, because they are not necessarily very old people, but they might have seen lots of things, at least some of them, because they know this experience of going to the market, so they have done it several times already. And even though they might be, some of them might be young and some of them might be older, again, they are already experienced, and that's probably the usual cycle that they're going to go through for the rest of their lives. So again, as the ass has no choice, no free will when he is harnessed, these people might be willing to do something else, but again, they never say, oh, our fate is miserable. They just report the facts in, if need be, in great detail, and they never complain of, or at least, again, in the piece that we are looking at, they do not complain of what...
Again, who says they should be complaining? Because
I mean, the thing with the poets is that poets sometimes complain, and sometimes if you are poetically minded and sensitive,
no, it's a very gentle
someone,
poem, really.
Yeah,
it's a very gentle poem. It's full of really gentle feelings as you look at it. So it was really quite prosaic till this moment. But then he starts remembering the bits of harness. And again, as we read it, it may not make much sense to us. Yeah, we don't have to know what these old bits mean. Maybe it's supposed to be something really strange from his world, but not from our world. Yeah, something very specific to him, which leaves us confused. And again, that in itself will show the difference between the reader and the narrator, because the narrator knows what we don't know. Yeah, again, if you think about art and literature, then many people say, oh no, you can't do it, you need to explain everything to the reader. If you have a strange word, you need to have a footnote explaining it. And what happens? Then we have people like Burns, or like some other people who use local expressions, and they don't care explaining them, because either it's not important, the specific meaning is not important, like here. We know it's bits of harness, that's all we need to know. Or you can understand it from the context. Yeah. So in this poem he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the reader, because he's not talking to the reader as such. He is talking to himself. Again, obviously it's only a game, because really he's talking to the reader, but in such a way which is a bit roundabout. And then when he starts thinking about the bits of harness, that's his world, he loves it, and that's why he can recreate it. Again, he doesn't just say, we took the harness inside, you know, there was shuttle and breeching and winkers and the collar and the reins. Yeah, he can see it, he can feel it. They're important to him, because if you see, he spends 4 lines describing the harness, or 5 lines if you include we took the harness inside, while the whole poem is only 1, 2, 3, 4 stanzas. So it's 1/4 of the poem, which is really big. And that's where he gets poetic, because he loves it, because that's where he can really... So again, if you want to recreate a whole world, how can you do it? It's big. Yeah, it's difficult. So that's what we have. First we have some kind of a sketch. We have a big map. Okay, we have Dundalk, we have Mucker, we have market, we have different people, Kerr here, people at the market there. We have this sketch, some general idea. Then we make it more specific. We choose one place. Because if you want to recreate a whole world, you can't do it all at once. You start with the heart, with the core. The core is your home, or where they exile the night. The Mucker becomes the heart of that reality which he wants to recreate, to bring back. But a house is still home. We have the bubble, we have the night all around it, we can focus on that space, but it's still a bit big. So he chooses one detail, and then if you can concentrate on this one detail, then you get more energy into it. And he focuses on harness, because harness is something really important to him, something that is a big part of his reality, a very important part, which has its story behind it. Yeah, so if you look at the harness, you don't see just the harness, you see people behind it, you see the story behind it, you see life behind it. Yeah, because it has, this is broken and they fixed it with bull wire. So we have a donkey harness but bull wire, and it comes together. They can do it. They can add different bits to fix it, and that is broken and this and that, and then it comes to life. And that's where he becomes poetic. You just listen to it, the straw stuffed straddle. You don't have to know the meaning, but you listen to it, the straw stuffed straddle, and the broken breeching, and bits of bull wire. Yeah? You have music in it. Yeah? So the beginning was prosaic, and now it's poetic. Now we have music. We had music before it, but it was a little bit hidden. And now we hear it clearly. Then again, the winkers that had no choke band. So what's the winkers? Something that stops the animal from seeing the sight. It's called winkers. Yeah, something that you put over horses or a donkey's eyes, so they don't get startled by something. They don't get scared. With no choke band. Again, it's what is choke band?
Something that goes around the neck.
Well, I think it goes around the jaw, if I'm not mistaken. But again, we have the word wink, seeing, and we have the word choking, but we have no choke band. So on one hand, it's sort of limiting, but at the same time, it's not choking you. Or at the same time, we have the word choke, we feel it. Because where he is now, he feels choked. That's how he feels, so he mentions it. The collar and the reins. The collar and the reins, now that could be said about the donkey, or it can be said about the person. A donkey can have a collar, and a person can have a collar. And here, he thinks about himself. He's not thinking about the donkey here. So this harness is at the same time the donkey's harness and his own harness. Yeah? In Eden Broadway, London town, I name the several names. And only here we realize what is going on. Yeah, the usual story where when an Irishman has to move to England to find a job. And he feels exiled in London. He doesn't like it there, but he has to be there. And maybe he feels broken, like a broken breaching. Maybe he feels straw stuffed inside. Yeah, in the sense that he's not fully alive in London, because London is alien to him. The winkers that had no choke band, again, maybe choking. The collar and the reins. Well, maybe again he thinks about himself now. He's wearing a suit with a collar, and maybe he works in an office or something, instead of being out with his friends, out at night with all the practical, real life surroundings. Maybe, we don't know, but maybe collar means that he's doing some silly paperwork now for money. Maybe. In Ealing Broadway, London town. So why do we need to say Ealing Broadway? Why not just to say in London?
Well, we want to be specific, and Ealing Broadway is somewhere specific, probably somewhere where, as you say, we can identify it as a place where there are lots of the Irish, or maybe because we might identify it as a poorer part of.
Okay, do you know anything about Ealing Broadway?
No.
I don't know either, really, to be honest. Well, you can check it, you can look at it, but guessing is useless, because you may say, oh, it's a poor part, and then you look for it and it's something completely different. No, either you know it or you don't know it, then again, if you read a poem, you don't have to know it. Yeah? If you know it, okay, good. If you don't know it, the poem must still work for you. Because you're not supposed to know all about Dundalk and Mucker and bits of Harness and bits of London, but it still has something to tell you. What? The name. Why Ealing Broadway, London town? Okay, you have no idea? No idea at all. Oh dear. Do you know homework for you again? Right, so we have Broadway. Yeah, it's big, it's broad, Broadway. We had a small secluded space, just a very personal space, filled with something really private, something that's important to you, something secluded. Yeah. And now we have Broadway. It's big, it's aliens all around you. Ealing, I don't know, Ealing. But Broadway, we have an image in the name. From small place in Mucker. What's Mucker? It's just some piece of dirt somewhere on the map. Yeah, we have no idea. Just some tiny little place. Then we have it Broadway. And then London town. Okay, not just in London, but London town, because before it wasn't a town, it was villages. Yeah, so now it's broad. Okay. Now we show that we're in a different place, which is really, really alien and hostile. We don't like it there. Again, if you say in Ealing Broadway, maybe in some sense you think in broad daylight. Because we had night and quietness in Mucker, and now we have Ealing Broadway, maybe in broad daylight, like London town. And again, we have this opposition of Mucker. What's Mucker? Where's Mucker? Nothing. Who cares about Mucker? And London. London is the capital of Great Britain. Everybody knows about London. It's a big place. Yeah. Everyone goes to London. So, in that sense, London represents like the whole Britain, or at least England, because maybe people who are not English may not agree that London represents Britain, but at least it represents England, and it's big and heavy in the sense of its influence. And Mucker is like a normal person, like from Ireland or somewhere else. And London tries to devour the small place, the small person. Yeah. London here is a big, bug-eyed alien who wants to eat you. But it's not that easy, because even if you're a little Mucker, you have your magic power, and magic is what London town will choke upon. And he uses magic. He can beat the big, I don't know, soulless maybe, in different London. We don't have anything that describes London, but we have this clear position, and we can see that he doesn't like it. Yeah, so all we discover about Mucker, Ireland, would be opposite to London. Yeah. But even if you're small and you come to that big alien space which wants to eat you, you're still bigger because you have your magic. So I named several names. But here, what happens here? We becomes I. So on one hand, he is separated from his group. He is exiled, and we can feel it because we change from we to I. And where are the rest of them? Where's the rest of his company? We don't know, but he's alone here, on his own, and even so, he can defeat the giant of London. I named several names. Now that's a proper magical spell, to name the names. That's what you do. Naming means bringing to life. Naming means you have it, you have the power. So what do we know about naming names in culture, history? In fairy tales, in not closing the door. How's the camera going, by the way?
Going fine. 12 more minutes.
Okay. So what do you know about naming names?
Some names cannot be named, they are not to be mentioned. Some names, again, the original story that we keep getting back to about Eve, giving names to...
Well, Adam, more technically.
Yeah, was it Adam? Okay.
Well, it doesn't really matter because in the beginning they were one creature. It's not like Adam was created and then Eve was created. Originally, if you really read it, then what it says, or that's how it's usually read, is that in the beginning there were one creature, but they had to be separated to communicate. Because you can't really communicate with yourself if you're one creature. You need to be two to communicate. So it doesn't really matter. Anyway, yeah. So you name, and that's how you get your power, by knowing the name. Yeah. Again, if you know someone's name, you have power over that person. If you know the names of bits of harness in London town, that's your power to bring it until the world comes to life. Yeah. I named several names. So there are several names, not just one name you need to know. You know the several names and you repeat them, and you don't just repeat it mechanically. As you repeat it, you name it, you mean it. You feel all that is connected to it. Again, the story, the people, the land, until the world comes to life. So he sits in London, exiled, feeling a bit unhappy about being alone and far from his home, but he can bring his home to London. He can turn big, crazy London into Mucker. Just like that. No problem. Until the world comes to life. Morning, the silent bog, and the god of imagination waking in a Mucker form. We had evening, we had night, we had time of darkness, again insecurity, loneliness, fear, and now we come to morning. Morning is a special time, same as night, but a morning is special because it's neither night nor day. It's time in between, and we have fog, which again is a place in between, where nothing is fixed. Yeah, anything may happen there in the fog. It's an unformed reality, same as morning is an unformed reality in transition from night to day. Morning, the silent bog, and again, you may read it as a description. It's a silent bog in the morning, or how I like to read it, how I feel it, is that morning is like a silent bog. You come into morning like you come into a silent bog, especially as it's foggy. If you come out really early in the morning, then what is around you is like a silent bog. And again we come to mucker, muck like mud, and now bog. We create the bog of silence in the middle of London, a busy town. We can do it, no problem. And of course, if you think about it in like a Russian way, which is what, again, he hardly meant here, I guess, but the word bog and then the word God. Maybe it's something he never intended, but what Vignomiki put in here for us today. We could read it.
Maybe you can, because the same word in Danish means a book.
Yeah.
So it's a silent book that probably defies any attempt to be read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, silent. Silent. Why silent?
In contrast to a very busy place like London, in contrast to all those people who run around doing their business and minding their business only, unable to stop, unable to think, unable to stay in silence. And silence is good for reflection, for remembering things, for as you say, bringing things to life in the middle of London somewhere. So you probably can do it even though you might be very busy, but again, that will probably interfere with something else. Here, when the morning is clearly silent and full of mystery, up there in Mucker, it's London, where mornings are usually not very silent, and where probably life sort of never stops, even during the night. Helps recreate the feeling of being back to Mucker, being back in a Mucker fog.
So maybe it's like morning fog in London becomes Mucker fog. And again, it's amazing how we start with something as prosaic as we borrow the loan of Kerr's house to go to download with water, and in the end we have the god of imagination waking. Again, in transit, he's not asleep, he's not awake, he's waking in progress, and that's where we are, in the place in between. Morning in between, fog in between, silence in between words or in between heartbeats, and waking in between sleeping and waking in a Mucker fog. So in what way is it related to us? Why do we read it? Why would we care reading about some Irish worker who is a bit nostalgic? Or why would we care? No, just because we brought it to the lesson means we have to read it. We didn't choose it. Why do we read it?
Because the feeling of nostalgia is not limited to Irish workers living in London only, and we can always relate to it, many of us. Again, the feeling of nostalgia is often seen by...
Is nostalgia the big question here, big problem here?
It's not a big problem, it's...
What's the big problem here?
Well, the big problem is that somehow Mucker and London are incompatible, and yet you can sort of recreate Mucker for yourself in London. And again, Mucker and London represent two opposite maybe lifestyles, sort of. Where two outlooks that are completely different, and you sort of, by evoking the image of Mucker, you sort of preserve your inner core.
So if we get a bit more particular in our present situation, present reality, say, I don't mean present like all that craziness in 2020, although that too, that's a part of it. But in general, how is it related to our situation?
Maybe many of us feel we no longer have roots in the reality that was in the beginning, and that still remains, or must still remain, the most important one for us. Instead, we are running around doing things, we are sort of
Doing things and not things.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So what is London town and what is Mucker in our reality, in our personal reality? Not just...
Mucker is something like the very important bit inside us.
How
Sort of,
important?
it's something that's connected to who we are, to our origins, to our souls. While London is something external, something alien, something that is really superficial, and although again, if you read that sort of thing in a sort of introverted way, you might say that your core is what matters most, and the outside world that often interferes with it, that often wants to impose its rules here on you, is hostile to you, or at least is foreign to you, and you can still survive and preserve your inner self in this visible world. That might be one of the readings. A reading that is probably not as extreme is that you can still preserve some good qualities that people leading some simple lives have, instead of becoming calculating, busy, nervous.
Well, you're still busy if you live in the country, maybe more busy than some people in the town. Yeah, you need to get to Kerr, get to the ass, go here, go there, get to the butter, sell the butter, do this, that. You're busy. You're still busy.
And yes, it sounds quite different. And it is quite different. And
but what is the main difference between a life in Mucker and life in London in that poem? What is the attribute that Mucker has and London doesn't seem to have?
To me, Mucker and Dundalk and some things have the attribute of being alive. And
Until the world comes to life means we have no world which is alive in London.
Yeah. So it's like lifeless. It's busy, it's circulating toward the world, but it's sort of doing that in vain. And
again, it's not described in the poem, but by their position we understand it and we feel it.
Again, it's probably a strong reminder to some of us who like searching for the meaning of life. Again, Patrick Kavanagh doesn't provide any answers. In fact, he sort of doesn't ask any questions. He makes us ask ourselves the question of whether we are running in the right direction, whether we are, and whether running is the best way of making the journey through life. I don't know. Think like that.
Yeah, so you may say that Mucker is our inner magic, is our inner life, is again what makes us ourselves, and London is, as they say, the system which tries to make you a machine in a sense, doing things mechanistically or being a small part of a mechanism rather than a person. How do you operate in it? Since you find yourself here, you find yourself in the system on your own. So what are your choices? Either to give up your identity, which is easier, or you use your magic. And then you can operate within the system and still do it by your own rules, keeping your own magic. Because he doesn't start a rebellion, he doesn't do anything. Yeah, he stops, he poses, he magics. He names several names and that is all. And then the god of imagination waking in the Mucker form. And imagination is what can beat London town in the sense of a big machine, because machines have no imagination.
Yeah. So again, the big question for me is whether it is all possible, whether we can preserve our identities.
It's possible. It's not
also in minor, I mean, also in minor things, because that's what I notice about myself. I start when I sort of talk to people. I sometimes use the expressions, the words, even if it's reflected in the words, in the names. So not you, but I tend to use the words that are sort of easily accessible, that help me identify with the people I talk to. Well, I notice it.
There's nothing wrong with it, as long as you're aware of it.
I'm aware of it, but I'm not sure that this is sort of so. Instead of again,
if you're aware of it, you can work with it. If you don't like it, you can just control it.
I don't know. It's just because I do that on purpose, and many people probably do lots of things, being quite aware that they do something that is not part of their instance. And again, the big question is whether we can survive and go somewhere unless we imitate the others, because to some extent we imitate the others when we learn the language.
Blending in, so you don't stand up like a sore thumb. Yeah, that's again, it's your flexibility. You're like water. You're feeling that container. You feel fine because you're not too serious about yourself. Yeah, so you can be with different people, but at the same time you have your core, which will not change. Still, if you are filling this container or that container, you're still water. You don't change from water to tea if you pour it from one container to another. You're still you. So if you change that much, then where is you?
That's the question.
So it's okay to blend in. It's good. It's a good experience. Hello. Sorry.
Isn't it also about
as long as you keep your core.
Yeah, but then you're sort of again stuck with wearing masks, because when
it's not a mask. If you do it wholeheartedly, it's not a mask. It's perception.
It is a mask first, and then you sort of.
It depends how you do it.
Then it
depends
sticks.
on how you do it. Again, it may stick if you're too serious about it. Oh, I'm a biker. I will never wear a dress. Yeah. Or then you have problems. Or if today I'm a biker, I'll be all brutal, and tomorrow I'm a princess, I'll be all girly, and the next day I'm a farmer. Yeah, and next day I'm a writer or something. You're moving, you're flexible, then it's not a problem.
Next day I'm an ass.
Yeah, why not? And next day I'm an ass, and next day I'm a dung beetle. Again, you're like water, you're filling this container, that container. You're not complaining, you're enjoying it. Because you're still water, here, there. You're still water.
Oh yeah. So it's a question of enjoying.
Then again, it doesn't mean that you must oblige people or something. Like, you like this sort of people, I'll be that kind of person when I'm with you. And you like some other kind of people, I'll be the other kind. No. You have lots of people around you, but only one you.
Only one, that's the question. Are you the only one?
Well,
Are you all these containers, as you say.
No, container is a container, it's a shape, but water is you. Yeah, water can change shape, but it's still water. There's, let's say, there's some meanness of me, which is important. The meanness of me, something that makes you you, and not someone else. Everything else can be changed. But the meanness of me is what we have to find, what we need to know. Because you see, okay, if I change this, will it still be me? Yes. If I change that, will it still be me? Yes. But you can never say what it is because it's unlanguageable. It does not belong to this framework. It's outside it. Because what is inside the framework of reality can be changed. Yeah? If it cannot be changed, it's outside of the framework of reality. And then you have no words for it. But you can sense it, you can feel it, you can play with it. Okay. Anything else?
No.
Good. Happy muckering. Happy muckering.